Good afternoon, Jordan.
Good afternoon, Vincent. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for giving me the time. Listen, obviously, you're well aware that we are dealing with this unprecedented situation with the global pandemic. And given that you are an e-commerce expert, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit on what companies can do in this environment to not only ramp up their e-commerce, but in certain cases to develop their e-commerce platform strategy for when we come out of this. So I think it's important for people to know a little bit who you are. You've just started a consulting firm, a strategic retail consulting firm, pardon me, called Tomorrow Retail Consulting, and congratulations, by the way. You've got 20 years of experience in retail, digital, e-commerce, and more recently, and that's where you and I met, you were in China for 11 years, and 10 years of those you spent with Walmart. And so you helped them develop first the e-commerce platform for Sam's Club, and then you took the learnings from that and you developed the e-commerce platform for Walmart. So you know a thing or two about how that has evolved in China, and obviously you're now applying that to clients all over the world. You've also sort of spearheaded their approach and their partnership with people like WeChat in China, which is no small feat. And finally, the latest thing is that in 2018, I think you were the chairman of Walmart's Global Omnichannel Forum, and that was guiding the company's priority around online to offline and digital innovation. So thank you very much for giving me the time, Jordan. My first question is how have you seen e-commerce transform that marketplace in China?
E-commerce in China, Vince, as you know, has always been very high as a participation in the market. So 25% before the crisis, and I suspect we'll see it at 35% post-crisis, with many categories at 50% or more. At that level of e-commerce penetration, online becomes your primary growth channel. So leadership teams and businesses across China don't view e-commerce as a secondary opportunity. It's really the opportunity. Going forward, 80% or more of growth across businesses in China will come from e-commerce. And so what happens in that situation is strategy, resource allocation, and talent all see a major shift. Strategically, businesses start by thinking about how a new product, even a new store, will perform in an e-commerce environment.
Right.
Resource perspective, they begin to shift from traditional investment, keeping the lights on in traditional businesses, if you will, to growth channels and being able to fuel that new technology investment. And then talent, you see a lot of the best talent, both operationally and strategically, shifting towards e-commerce, whereas historically that may have been in the mainline traditional business.
Okay, so as you know, and this crisis will eventually come to an end. So as the crisis not subsidized, but subsides, what do you think is going to be the big difference? And I'm talking more here, Europe, North America, with the situation you've seen pre-crisis.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's three things that we'll likely see as permanent changes. First, e-commerce will dramatically increase as a percent of business. We've seen in China already in the days as things return to somewhat normal, e-commerce penetration at 2 times what it was for most companies pre-crisis. I think in the US and the West, we'll see that in even greater penetration. Second, it moves from e-commerce to all commerce. Digital innovation will not just focus on serving customers online, it will actually come offline. And in the future, you'll see digital influence the way associates check in for work, all the way to how customers check out of stores. Every aspect of how you engage with your associates, your customer, will be digitized. Third, all of the data that now accumulates from your e-commerce business growing and digitizing your remaining business puts businesses in a position to begin using that data to personalize the experience. Data becomes the next frontier of competition, and those that use that well and deploy it will be the most successful going forward.
So let me just take something you've mentioned and perhaps an example for people that are less familiar with digital. When you say things are going to digitize for employees, what does that look like? What does that actually mean?
Sure. Yeah, this is still early stages here in the West, and I think this crisis is going to accelerate. So in China, the typical day in the life of an associate is as they get to work, they open WeChat and they find out what their focus area is for the day.
Oh,
They're
wow.
able to check in through the day, uploading photographs to home office on what's been done, where out of stocks are throughout a store, for instance, at a retailer, and what they feed back in terms of ideas and opportunities in the business. Data accumulated from customer experiences are able to be displayed to the associates so that they can actually understand who they're serving. They can personalize their service to customers by using that data. So digital becomes a key enabler throughout the associate experience, just as it has been for the customer already in China.
So coming back to e-commerce, you've mentioned that a little bit in the answer to my first question, but from an organizational perspective, I'm preparing to go digital. What does it mean for us as an organization, and how do leaders start thinking through what it means for them?
Certainly. Three areas I think you're going to see major transformation in businesses due to this change. First is technology.
Right.
Businesses have traditionally focused on technology as a support function, really keeping the lights on, as I mentioned. That changes dramatically in the new world. The technology function becomes the enabler of serving customers in the way they need to be served now going forward. Second is the fading of the lines between marketing and e-commerce. Going forward, those two functions end up merging because they touch the customer in a way where you can't really separate the way you communicate with the way you transact going forward. And so we're seeing the emergence of chief customer officers, chief digital officers that combine those functions in a way that's really critical. And third, the adaptation of the remaining functions of the business to understand digital. So for instance, take merchandising or product development. Those areas need to understand how products display and sell online. Even compliance and legal are functions that need to understand digital and innovation in a way that they don't or haven't historically needed to embrace. They need to learn and adapt to enable a digital first culture.
So it sounds like you're saying there's going to need to be quite a bit of education of even existing people on what it means to go digital. And then there's going to be some perhaps new positions, changes to the organizational structure that are going to be required to meet. If I'm a leader and I'm looking at this, right, and I want to prepare myself, and I'm talking about a CEO or somebody who's responsible for a function, what is it that I need to start thinking about? What is it that I need to start learning, training, and so on and so forth?
Vincent, on top of all the essential leadership capabilities that we know are necessary, there's three things that I think leaders in a digital first environment have to add. The first is agility. So digital businesses move faster, and they understand that the ability to test, iterate, and scale at speed is more important than perfection. Leaders have to embrace and be comfortable that execution won't be perfect. As long as it learns and gets better towards an ultimate goal, you're in a better place. Agility.
Can I just come back to that, because I think it's absolutely critical. So are you saying that as a leader, let's say I'm not comfortable, I have to be comfortable with essentially putting a service or a product out there that is not quite ready, and I'm going to learn as I go?
Absolutely. As a leader, my mantra on this was, if you've waited until your product is perfect, you've waited far too long. You need to be comfortable putting concepts to market that are unrefined, that have a basic minimum viable product or concept that you can test, learn, and iterate. This is a dramatic change, Vincent, and you're right. It's a big deal to operators who have always focused on execution and getting things right from the start, shifting to evolving in real time and enabling your teams to make decisions to do that without leadership approval and support is all essential to agile ways of working. And that's the way digital businesses work. And so leaders have to adapt to that.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you a final question, but I think you've sort of answered it, but it might summarize a little bit. So, what is it that companies need to adjust in terms of their organizational structure, and what functions become sort of the critical functions in that new digital e-commerce space?
Sure. So I spoke about the merging of e-commerce and marketing, and that's something that I think we'll see over the next 2 years become very common. A customer organization that focuses on serving the customer across all channels. The second key area is the data organization, and often this sits in the customer organization, but there needs to be a single data strategy and team that can ensure consistency, well-maintained data that's used in areas across the business. And then third, I mentioned technology shifting from being a support function to be really a source of innovation and driving product development across the organization so that you can serve customers in the new ways that you need to, online and offline.
That's really interesting. So if you had to summarize, the three key things overall that CEOs, organizations have to think about to prepare themselves for a more e-commerce driven, a more digital world, what would be in your mind the key three things they really have to keep in mind?
It starts with taking a 50-50 perspective going forward. Assume e-commerce is 50% of your business, or at least 50% of your growth going forward.
Right.
Second, digital doesn't stop online. It permeates every area of your business, and look at how you can bring that digital innovation into your core operations and how you serve customers in customer service and offline retail. Everywhere where you touch the customer and even associate, bring technology, bring digital innovation there. And then third, realize that 3 years from now, the winners will be the ones that used the data that they generated through number 1 and 2 to create a personalized experience for their customer. And if you are not creating that capability now, 3 years from now, you will not be in a position to compete.
Very good. Jordan, that was fantastic. Thank you very much. Very illuminating. And I hope people will take to heart what you've just shared with us, because I think it's extremely valuable. Thanks, Jordan. Great to see you again. Stay healthy, and hopefully we can see each other in the near future.
Thank you, Vincent. Appreciate everything that you're doing. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, sir. Take care.